Teddy, darling, would you like to come and say hello? Oh, there you are.
Hi,
Okay, that's
Patty.
good. Okay, so do you remember how it goes? We say hello and welcome to. Oh, okay, perhaps we're not as chatty as we are usually. Shall we try one more time? Hello and welcome to Pet Talk with me, Anna, and Teddy. There we are. And you remember I was telling you about this fabulous book with, and it's our guest. Can you remember her name? Can you just have? That's right. It is Rita Hogan. Hello, Rita.
Hi. How are you?
Welcome. I'm so excited about this fabulous book of yours. It is called The Herbal Dog. And and you can see it is packed with marvelous information. So I thought maybe it would be good to start with your journey into herbalism because reading that in your book was just such a beautiful story. If you could share some of that with the audience, I think that would be great.
Yeah. So you know, it's those little nuances and subtleties that follow you throughout your life and like what we're doing today, we don't have much clue about how it will grow and manifest for the future tomorrow and for the future, right? And so when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time in nature with my dog and well dogs and my horse and my father and I didn't know that all those things were going to lead till today, but they really did leave an impression on me in where when I found myself in a transition in my life between my 20s and 30s, that transitional year of like 29, 30. um I went back to my roots, went back to what do I want to do with my life? And I didn't know. I tried a few things on. I knew I wanted to work in the health and wellness space. I've always been called for that, but I didn't know that would look like. And when I moved to my farm in Tennessee, I boarded dogs for a living, and it was kennel free boarding. So there, we had this huge house. It was just huge house, bigger than I was very much used to, and open floor plan. And we would board like 30 dogs a day, and we were on 32 acres, but there was 5 acres that was fenced, um, and I would go on walkabout with the dogs every morning, and they were just out, right? The little ones spent more time in the house because they're little and they're hard to keep track of, and they can run all over the house and get lots of exercise and have fun and not be bothered by the big ones. But um, it was a kind of a free for all, and I learned so much about dog behavior. But what was so disturbing was how sick the dogs were, and this was in 2002. So 2002, 2003, roughly there, kind of ramping up 2004, 2005. And um, I had never even met a dog with cancer until probably 2005. But I boarded dogs, I did it for 12 years. And so over a decade. And accumulatively, I thought, wow, this is crazy. These dogs are a mess. Like, I got to the point where I could guess what type of kibble a dog was eating when they got out of the car for their interview. Like, I knew a Pro Plan dog, I knew a pedigree dog, I knew a science diet dog. I knew if a dog was eating less than pedigree, which is hard to do, but it can be done. And so like it was very, very strange. And then, I had a couple of clients that fed raw, and uh I was like, raw, like what is that? And I'm like, this is just like when I grew up. We didn't call it anything though. It was just how you fed your dogs. My dog Susie, she ate raw, she ate cooked, she ate milk, she ate creatures. She did whatever. We didn't buy kibble. So it it was interesting to just see the difference in those dogs and the difference in a lot of my boarding dogs. And it was only a couple of dogs. They were Vishlas that did the raw. She would bring me a big freezer, like a what I don't a cooler,
Yeah.
and it was interesting. And I was like, wow. But I noticed that even by changing the kibble, because I had befriended this woman in Nashville that ran a holistic dog store, and it was when raw was first coming out. There was no freeze dried or anything, just and then she would sell what I would call upper hierarchy kibble brands. It was like Now and Go and different types. Even Canaday was a good food back then. And I noticed a difference between feeding that type of kibble to feeding the pedigrees and science diets and things like that, the corn, wheat, soy kibbles, and then the difference was night and day. I mean, night and day. And so I established like that you could only board with me if you fed like this kibble on up, and you had to feed it all year, like because I would know. And the difference in the dog's behavior, in the dog's demeanor in general, and their body, like what their body looked like, was just crazy. And then I had, before that, I had a health scare with my own dog when I moved to Tennessee because I moved out into the mountains and there was nothing, and we just, we were moving in. We picked up a bag of Purina with yogurt, and my dog started getting pneumonia just nonstop. And we were just so busy moving in that I didn't put it together. And I can't, you look back and you're like, how could I not put that together? And then I did. And then I looked up all the ingredients in that kibble and I thought, this has got to be illegal. It's got to be illegal. So I called my representative for our state and I'm like, this can't be legal. Is it legal? And yeah, it's legal. And I was like, wow. And it just put me on a journey. And then I was really looking into human herbalism, and I just shifted. And I'm like, I ran a rescue at that time, a pug dog rescue, and I started using herbs on them. I started bantering back and forth with my vet about natural medicine or less pharmaceutical medicine. And it just went off from there. And I just noticed all the changes in dogs in general. And it just kind of just rolled over the years. And here I am. So it's been, I don't know, like I think 2000. So what is that? I don't know how many. It's like 23 years, maybe. I'm not great at math off the top of my head, but like 23 years ago. And it's been just a great journey. It's been really lovely. And the plants just, the plants dictate where you're going. They show up and they do these things and you're just like, oh my God, that is just so great. I recently had a horse. Uh, I mostly work with dogs, and dabble in cats, and I have a horse myself, so I do know a little bit about horse herbalism. But I recently had a woman reach out to me about a horse that couldn't walk and that they were going to put him down, and I just babbled off like three remedies that just they're just like that one, that one, that one, and that horse is running, you know, and it has nothing to do with me. It's the plants, it's just like that plant medicine is working for that horse. Do I know how long it will work? I don't know, but it is working and has been working for a while. And that horse is a completely different horse. It just had a lot of buildup of gunk.
I love that. I love the way that you gradually began to put things together and it led you on this path because I think that for most of us who fall in love with plants, that is the way. It just happens, and it's true. They do show up. So it's a very magical way of working. But if we step away from the magical side of it and we look at the practicalities, um, there is a difference in the approach that allopathic medicine takes to the way that a holistic herbalist like you would take.
Oh, absolutely.
Would you describe for the audience what the difference is in the approach that is being taken?
Yeah, it's much, it is, well, it's obviously it's I would say initially it seems like a more difficult path initially, but it's not. It's definitely the easier path. Um, in that when you work holistically with the dog, you look at symptoms, but you're not chasing them. You look at the dog as an ecosystem. You look at, where their moisture is in their body, where their heat, what heat levels they have, or levels of cold. And you look at their lifestyle and, you know, who they are as a constitution, as an individual. And when you start doing that and you put that little bit of work in the beginning, figuring them out, looking at their patterns, um, then it really does dictate the majority of herbs that will work for your dog. And then you start working from a palette that is more conducive for healing that it is that their body is fighting it. And with allopathic herbalism, you're looking at what that plant can give you. You're looking at the constituents of the plant. A lot of science looks at plants at these main constituents that they have deemed active, and they're not looking at the hundreds of constituents that they feel, kind of like they think about junk DNA, right? Um, it's not. They're all meant for a purpose. And so allopathic herbalism just kind of, it's what that plant can give you. What is it for? And do I have that? So, if you look up herbs for arthritis, there's so many. And you might say, well, I'm just going to take 5 or 6 herbs and throw the spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks. Now, some people, you could find something that you definitely can find something that way. I'd say you got a 50-50 chance, right? And but for me, that might lead someone to believe in herbalism, which is my number one goal, whether they're allopathic or holistic. But when you're looking at holistic herbalism, you're looking at like real healing, because holistic herbalism doesn't completely suppress symptoms. Everybody wants to suppress symptoms. They want to act like it's not happening. And there's a reason why things happen. And, going back to arthritis, you know, when I look at arthritis, there's about 7 to 8 paths that lead to arthritis, and they're not the same. Their origin story is not the same. And that goes for so many things in the body. Leaky gut, there's a good four origin stories there of why that gut is leaking. It's not just one thing. Like, you've got leaky gut. Well, where's that leaky gut coming from? Is it coming from the liver? Is it coming from uh, digestive enzymes? Is it coming from the lymphatic system? There's so many things. And then that boils down to, and for me, everything boils down to the nervous system. So, looking at things holistically, definitely you got to put that extra time in to really kind of be with your dog and really understand, just observe them daily, and things will just come right out. And then, really healing them at a cellular level. And that healing doesn't stay, it's in flux, it's in constant flux. So when you get to the point where you have a palette of herbs, you know that these herbs work really well for your dog to kind of go like this, because that's what we're doing with our health. We're doing this, little this, little that, little this, because what happens is things are coming at you. They're coming at your dog and they're coming at you, right? And then you have to constantly adjust for, we need a little more help here. We're low on zinc and selenium here. Um, and then we've come in contact with, like you're walking down a farm road and they just sprayed glyphosate all over it the day before. You have no clue. Then all of a sudden you and your dog feel really kind of puny, right? And what detoxification herbs work for my dog? You find out they spray glyphosate. Okay, say that you had a warm dog, and I would definitely say start giving them plantain, and that will balance back out again. So I think the beauty in herbalism is found in holistic care. I mean, the nuances, the subtleties, and also the lack of complete suppression.
Yes, indeed. It is the lack of suppression. And what I love about this approach to healing is that it's gentle. It's a gentle nudge and a gentle tweak. And it's, as you say, it's keeping things in balance, which makes complete sense to me. And that's one of the reasons why I loved your book. I got so excited when I saw it because it's it's wonderful to see these concepts that I'm familiar with in terms of people now being applied to dogs. Now, you mentioned the word ecosystem and knowing your dog's ecosystem. So, can you explain what that means, please?
Yes. So, I always take all my guidance and the mentors that I've worked with and followed and read, leading up to where I am today, um, have all taught me that, we look to nature. And when you really look at it, nature will give you all the answers of what is happening. And nature is a macrocosm, right? When you're talking about your dog as an ecosystem, but when you look at how nature interacts with each other and how it moves through seasons and it ebbs and it flows and it blooms and then it detoxes and then it uses those nutrients to create the cycle all over again. You can apply that same to yourself and your dog. You're an ecosystem, your dog is an ecosystem. So one of the things um, in Western medicine, not Western herbalism, but medicine, um, is that they really truly believe that the organs aren't connected in many ways. Not saying every doctor, but in many ways, you're taught. You go see a specialist for your gastroenteritis, and you go to your liver specialist and your musculoskeletal specialist, and you go to a psychologist for your brain, which is ridiculous. And um, but holistically, everything's connected and it works as an ecosystem. So if your dog's liver is congested and it's backed up, it's not working as fast as it can, it should, in balance, and that's putting pressure on the kidneys. That's making the lymphatic system not work as well. And when the lymphatic system isn't working well, it just goes right back. The liver isn't working as well. The gut isn't working as well. The kidneys aren't working as well. The bone marrow isn't doing what it should as well, right? So when you look at your dog as an ecosystem, you can know that everything's connected and what you do for one system will benefit the others. And I think that's the really important thing. So like when you look at nature and you see a stream with a greasy film on it, right? You know that that stream has been exposed to some type of petrochemical, most likely, right? And so everything downstream is going to be affected. And it's the same as the body. Like when we are exposed to these chemicals and environmental toxins and the toxins in all of our food, no matter if it's organic, biodynamic, it doesn't matter. It's still being exposed to things on the way here. And also, our soils aren't plentiful. We have to make changes with pollution. And so in a dog's ecosystem model, that pollution is going to affect the entire ecosystem in many ways. And when you look at things that everything is connected, you'll understand that when we work on our dog's systems, we benefit the whole entire ecosystem. And, um, in my book, in the Everything's Connected chapters, I start out with the nervous system, and I swear to God, I need to start a podcast called Page 137 because it's all I talk about. But the issue is the best page in my whole book is page 137. This page right here, the single page, can help you so much if you do it regularly. And what you do is you get your palette of herbs, which you will learn in Everything's Connected, and using the back, which is there's fancy names for what's in the back, but for most people, I just call them herbal resumes, right? They're a resume and they're applying to be inside your dog. They're like, please make a tea of me, right? They're herbal resumes, and you match those resumes to your individual dog. And I tell you how to do that in the book, but you go to page 137 and it really is just the dog's ecosystem. Number one, you stabilize the nervous system. And I start my Everything's Connected chapter with the nervous system because it all comes down to the nervous system. It all comes down to the nervous system. The nervous system dictates how that ecosystem is going to work. Because when we are in fight or flight, our dogs are in fight or flight. They share our emotions. Your dog isn't more than 10 feet from you almost at all times, unless you're gone from the house, right? And when we're with our dogs, we're sharing that heart space. We're sharing those, we're sharing everything. We're sharing electrons. We're sharing our microbiome. We're sharing it all. And when we are in fight or flight, they are in fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight and your dog is anxious or nervous, and even those signs that aren't outward, that you just don't realize, they're just sitting there tense, right? They can feel your tension. They're tense. That shuts down the ecosystem in so many ways. It shuts down the liver, the lymphatic system, the kidneys. Everything goes to the heart and musculature, and we get tension, and everything slows down. And the issue with pathogens is that they're opportunistic. Okay, so they wait. They're opportunistic, and they use they use sensing that science doesn't even understand. And they wait for that moment when the ecosystem is weak, right? When it's weak, and it's at its weakest when we're stressed. Stress is a killer because it weakens our organs, and it gives those pathogens this opportunistic benefit of immune surveillance. And immune surveillance is not happening when you're in fight or flight. And so all of the organ systems, besides the heart and musculature, which, they're not benefiting from fight or flight. It's very hard on the heart. It's very hard on the musculature. Because it's tensing everything up. It's, you're running away from things. The subconscious doesn't understand that. And so when you stabilize the nervous system first, when you get that under control, and a lot of people are like, well, my dog's not nervous. And then we have a conversation and we start going through things, and they're actually very nervous. They're very tense. They're very restless. And then I usually find out that so is the family or the person. They've been fighting. They've been, stressed out, that someone's been sick in the family, lots of things like that we just isn't on our radar because our dogs are part of our family, but they're not a part of our evolution as a human, but they are. Do you know what I mean? They are.
I do. I do. And I think, that you bring up so many important points because, this is my work as an analytical hypnotherapist is part of that brings me to show people the link between the mind and the body and how much what is going on affects the nervous system and then the nervous system impacts on everything else. So what you're doing is you're saying, well, actually, folks, it's the same for our animals. And of course it is, because we are wired in a very similar way. And we all have the fight, flight, freeze. And I add the hide or deceive response. Um,
Yeah.
and so we all have that. Our dogs have it. And they communicate their stress in different ways, and we need to work out how they speak. So this is it's wonderful because it's so important that we begin to think of our dog's emotional well-being. Most of the interviews on the Pet Talk channel are about behavior, and they are about the emotional well-being of our dogs. So I've interviewed countless numbers, it seems, of behaviorists, and all of them talk about the importance of understanding the emotional makeup of our dogs and the fact that their emotions are very similar to ours. So, so now we're taking it one step further and we're saying, okay, so that emotional response that they're having may actually be impacting the physical well-being of our dogs. And it's interesting too, because when we're talking about how our emotional state affects them, there's also animal communicators who talk about that, how they pick up what's going on
Yeah.
around them and they kind of just hold it. Um,
Hold it for you, and
yeah,
they'll take it on for you.
that's right. And I can see that. So these are all different pieces of a puzzle, and we have a hard enough time putting together those pieces when we're talking about humans. Now we're talking about non-verbal creatures, and it's a bit like non-verbal children or, that pre-verbal stage where we have to work really hard to observe what they're communicating.
Well, and the thing is they're nonverbal, but they speak volumes if you know what to look for. And I do have a lot of lists in my book of what to look for. They do speak volumes, but the interesting thing about that fight or flight response and taking it a step further, you know, when you're looking at the dog as an ecosystem, when I say, like here in America, if you're having panic, right? If you're having panic, you're sent to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, right? And of course, talking about how you're feeling helps bring down that fight or flight and stress. However, but if the panic is being caused by high copper or chlorine levels, we drink a lot of chlorine and dogs drink a lot of chlorine in the United States. And when trace minerals are out of balance, you can get restlessness, panic. If you're in fight or flight all the time, the microbiome changes when it does not have access to what it needs. And when the microbiome changes, the behavior changes, and that's why I'm saying it needs to be, well, humans, I think with humans, I think it's an excellent blend of, I think talk therapy in general really helps bring down stress and helps lighten the load and get it, like help someone deal with those feelings. But I think it needs to be combined with microbiome work and essential fatty acid work, which is a big problem with humans and their mental state and also heavy metals. It's just a huge problem. with feeling panic and fright and even what is that called, intrusive thoughts and things like that. But our animals can have some of those same parallel problems when they have an overabundance of minerals, when they're not getting enough minerals, different like selenium and zinc. And um, dogs suffer a lot from copper, excessive copper, but we're not looking at excessive chlorine, excessive fluoride. These are things that we're exposed to every day. So again, bringing it back to organ health. Um, when you focus on organs, the body can help release a lot of that buildup if it has what it needs to do that. And stabilizing the nervous system is one thing. Like when you give the nervous system things to cope with, and the dog feels less stress or apt to deal with stress. Now, if you have this goes into chapter 3, but if you have a cool dog or a cold dog, I'm going to tell you right now that acutely, a lot of the remedies that you hear about for stress and relaxation will work, but not long term because those remedies are too cooling. Cool dogs need help with dealing with stress, not the stress itself. It's the taking on their owner stress, taking on not being able to process and deal with stress. Whereas more warm, hot dogs, they're energizer bunnies. That like, I can't shut it off. Oh my God. Like border collie syndrome where, you're just like, or Australian Shepherd, they are bred to be on. They need extra help with the nervous system department. So like, there are different ways to deal with the nervous system, but when you understand it and try some things out that start working, your dog becomes different. They start to settle. They start to calm down. And then you notice that skin problems start to go away. Things start to fall, and that's that ecosystem resetting itself. So when you want to do really good work with the lymphatic system and the liver and the gut, and everyone focuses on the gut so much, but you can't get really good gut health without good lymphatic and liver health. And so when you realize all of this is connected, everything is connected, you can figure out where to start, and that is the nervous system. And then you go to the lymphatic system, then you work on the liver, and a lot of these herbs, unlike politics, cross the aisles. They cross into different systems. You give it for the liver, but it's doing so much. I recently had a conversation. In fact, it wasn't recent, it was yesterday. No, it was Monday. It was Monday. I had a live Q&A, and someone asked, we were talking about ticks, and someone asked about a formula that's on the market that is put together to make a dog's skin taste bad to a tick, right? The intention is good. I get it. Ticks are a terrible problem. I get the intention. But what I explained was you can't ask herbs to go into the body, right, and do one thing. That's not going to happen. Just go into the body and make my dog's skin taste terrible, or like garlic, right? Give your dog garlic and they'll smell bad to a flea. Yes, it's true. But garlic giving on a daily basis to a warm dog is going to cause major problems. Is there anything wrong with the garlic? No, nothing. But the garlic is an individual. The garlic has a constitution, and it's warming, it's antimicrobial, it's antibacterial, and it is a phenomenal herb. But given on a daily basis to a dog who is fighting heat, we're going to make that heat worse. And when we make that heat worse, we're going to influence disease. So, it's like I don't know if you've ever gotten a food sensitivity test, but you look and be like, how in the heck could I be sensitive to something as good as broccoli, right? It's because you're eating it way too much and your body is missing some items that are allowing that broccoli to move through the body with grace and ease versus your body looking at it as an antigen and as a invader. So like, and that can happen with dogs as well. So it's just these subtle nuances that um, allopathically someone would give that formula on a daily basis with good intention and desperation because of ticks. But holistically, we know that when we give wormwood every day and we give certain herbs every day, we need to find out what those herbs do, so that we can look at how are they landing in the body, how are they manifesting in the body, and your dog is now constipated. You don't know why. It's got to be something, and you're not even looking at this formula that you started giving for ticks, or your dog isn't digesting their food well. Some dogs, that formula might be excellent. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, my dog has never been doing so well, right? They probably have some type of pathogen in them. And so it's like, but after a certain point, you have to stop those types of remedies, those heavy detoxifying remedies, because the body gets to a point where it doesn't need that type of detoxification. And then you start tipping that ecosystem into an imbalance. So, are you overwhelmed yet? Because, sorry, it just happened.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because what is coming through loud and clear is that this is about harmonizing. And there is something that you've been saying that I feel people are going to need to have some clarification, because you're talking about a dog being a cool dog or a hot dog. And I think this is very traditional medicine terminology. I know that traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and indeed very I would say ancient Western medicine, which is still being practiced in terms of medical astrology, would use this terminology in terms of the temperament. So I can hear people going, what's that got to do with the price of fish? So could you explain what we are talking about when you're saying a dog is hot or cold, or indeed dry or moist even? So if we could just explain that, that would be helpful.
Yes. So, everything has an energetic to it. It's either warming or cooling or neutral. I have not met hardly any neutral animals in this day and age. Probably could have met them a long time ago, like 100 years ago, but not right now. Dogs are born warm or cool, and it's on a spectrum, you know, and I'm just going to use myself as an example. I am a warm, damp person. So that means that I have a little bit too much moisture built up in my tissues. Um, and I borderline on hot. And there's this snack that I love. It's some type of uh, it's like a jerky, but it's made from plants. I think it's made from mushrooms, and it's seasoned in such a way that it's very warming. Okay. So I take one bite and then my chin gets really red right here. And every now and then, probably every 4 months, I will eat a package of it, knowing that that one package is fine, but it's so good that I just want more, right? And if I take more of it, I know that I'm going to start feeling off and feeling crappy and hot and irritable and agitated, right? And what's causing that is the heat that is coming from that food, the spice that that food has, and probably inherently the food itself. Um, so I don't do it. I never eat more than one package. I just don't. And because when I have, and I've done it consistently, I end up feeling miserable. And that is an example of what happens with our animals. Now, we all know that a lot of our animals eat the same thing day in and day out. So energetics comes into play even more. It's more important. And the sicker your dog is, the more energetics is vital. So basically what we're saying is your dog warm or cool? And chapter 3 will answer all those questions, but here's the easiest way to do it. What does your dog do with heat? Do they gravitate towards heat? And you may not know until you start looking at their choices in the world. Some of us don't pay attention to those things. Well, I don't know. Does your dog like to, like if you bought a memory foam bed, now that is going to be a hot bed. And let's say it's covered with some type of synthetic. Oh, I got a bed made out of recycled plastic bottles, right? And it's a fur bed, it's awesome. It's got memory foam. He's going to love it, right? A warm dog may only lay in that bed when it's super cold out and they're cold. A warm dog can get cold, but they're not going to get cold for long. They're going to lay in that bed for about 10 minutes and then they're going to go up and they're going to get up and lay on the cold floor. They're hot, because those beds store heat. Now, a cold or cool or cold dog are going to lay in that bed a lot longer. And if they're cold, if their tissues are very cold, you may not be able to get them out of that bed. Or they may lay by the fire and bake themselves, and you have to physically remove that dog. That is telling me that they might be cold. And so I'm gonna introduce some warming things and see how their vitality probably will increase. Um, do they like to be covered up? So I have two pugs. One is Ronan. He is much colder than Fig. So Fig will go under the covers for maybe half hour, and then she comes up. She's hot. She goes out onto the bed, cools off, then goes back in. It's just all night, just does it all night long. Ronan goes under the covers, snuggles up to you, and does not leave until the next morning. And he builds heat around him and he's hot, you got to step away and then he keeps on getting closer. Um, he is definitely a much cooler dog than Fig. Um, I'd say Fig is slightly warm. Um, but does your dog spend a lot of time on a tile floor? Or are they constantly trying to get up on the couch? And if tile's all they have to choose from, are they constantly trying to find some warmer place than that tile? Because tile is very cool, right? So just kind of pay attention. How long do they stay in the sun? Do they stay in the sun for 10 minutes and then find a shade? Or do they stay in the sun for 40 minutes and just like out there panting, just, oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. Start to pay attention. And then dampness shows itself in many ways. If your dog is too damp, any dog that's hypothyroid is damp. Damp is easy. Any dog that has chronic yeast, damp. Chronic skin, like skin tags, not skin tags, but skin growths, like sebaceous cysts in general, lipomas, damp. So there's a whole list in my book in chapter 3 of damp conditions. And, if your dog has any one of those major conditions, they're damp. And then dryness is a little harder to figure out. But most dogs, because of vaccines, antibiotics, and the foods that we feed them tend to be damp in different levels, severely damp or slightly damp. There are dry dogs out there for sure, but more on the damp side. But I deal with both dry and damp in there. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, it's pretty simple. And then once you find out if your dog is warm or cool, it doesn't normally change. It just goes up and down the warm to hot scale, back and forth. Again, it's this. After that your dog had, let's say your dog had a dental surgery and they're a warm dog, they're going to gravitate towards getting warmer, and you're just going to cool them off and bring them down to a nice, healthy warm. And then, if you vaccinated them, they're going to get warmer. You got to bring them back down. Um, Uh, so, and same thing goes for cold. Like you give your dog cool dog surgery, they're going to get colder. The only times I've ever seen it flip is when a dog has their spleen removed, and usually it can be permanent flip. Um, when the spleen is removed, when you start removing organs, that causes a deep change within the ecosystem. Also, like a blood transfusion can cause a flip for a short period of time, usually less than a month. Um, and a month's time, it doesn't matter because energetics is about longevity. It's not about acute. So if you have a cool dog and you want to use skullcap and chamomile and uh, lemon balm to calm them down before they go to the vet, that will work because it's acute. It's like for a day or two. That's no problem. But those cooling herbs are not going to work on your dog long term to help calm them. Um, so once you figure out the especially just the warm and cool can change your life. I mean, it is unreal the changes that it happens with people. And when I speak about this in public, I always show this slide of 1 teaspoon of turmeric. Okay, 1 teaspoon of turmeric isn't going to do hardly anything to any dog, right? But then I show a slide of 365 teaspoons of turmeric, right? For let's just say a golden retriever gets a teaspoon of turmeric every single day for a year. And when you see 365 pictures of turmeric, you understand the implications of what we're feeding because turmeric is warm, very warm. Or if it was ginger, ginger's hot. So it was 360. And what if you did turmeric and ginger and you were giving this to a dog who's already warm? And then you say, yeah, my dog pants all the time. He's always hot. He just can't control his heat. And he bites at his feet. He has ear infections. He's got all of these things because that heat is causing congestion because the ecosystem doesn't have any air conditioning, doesn't have any coolant because the heat is drying it all up. And it's pushing that ecosystem to the point where it's so unbalanced. So then you take that heat away, take it away, and then all of a sudden your dog is able to go on a mile walk. It's able to breathe. It's able to sit on the floor and not, be exhausted all the time and agitated, irritated, so many things. It's not biting its feet anymore. It's not doing all the things. It's not the ear infections aren't coming on a monthly basis anymore because you are bringing down that heat in the ecosystem and it's able to regulate itself. And the way that we bring down heat is we either take it away or we add cool. Does that make sense?
It
I
makes
hope.
perfect sense. And I'm sitting here listening to you and thinking how important it is that we begin to understand this because for those of us who are interested in herbs and we have, the Materia Medica, the beautiful books with all the herbs and their properties and what they're good for. And when you start just looking at the letter A and you begin to see that so many herbs are helpful for the same thing. And then you think, well, which one? And I think for me, when I started to understand this, is when I realized that herbalism is an art as much as anything else. It's an art because it's about the fine tuning and it's more than just thinking which herb for what. It's that alchemy of the different things that are working together, as you say, the different organs, and also now factoring in the actual temperament of the body of the person, the animal, and it's that's going to create this beautiful harmony. So I am so grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. And I do want to just end on the note that it might sound like difficult or confusing. It's not. It is so easy. And I tell people, you're using herbs every day. Even people that don't think they're alcohol, different drinks that you drink in a bar, they're all coming from plants. Making a cup of tea, you're using herbal medicine. You're drinking an infusion, you know. And with people that have never used herbs for their dogs, figuring out that hot and cool, and then looking at those monographs, that Materia Medica, those resumes, you pick the opposite. So you figured out if you figured your dog is warm, you're going to focus on mostly cooling herbs, and then you have a higher chance of really succeeding.
Yeah. So thank you again. And a reminder to everyone that the wonderful book that we have been discussing is this one. It is The Herbal Dog. And I can't recommend it enough. There will be a link to it in the description box. Now, I am very jealous of anybody living close to you who can have access to your services, Rita. But tell us, do you work online, and how do people find you?
So I have a course platform, a teaching platform, a school at canineherbalism.com. And then I have a website, canineherbalist.com. That's my consulting and my store and things like that. And then I have a podcast called Dogs Are Individuals. I am on Instagram at Canine Herbalist, and then at Canine Herbalist on Facebook. I dabble in the other socials, but not that much. I tend to focus on those two. And then I am on Substack. I'll be starting to work with other herbalists and other veterinarians this year with collaborated articles. I haven't written anything yet, but we're gonna launch that. And I think that I do consulting with my colleague and kind of apprentice Krista Fox, who's a vet tech and herbalist, and she's just great. So her and I do protocols together for people, and and then my book is found anywhere you buy books. So
a link to all of that will be in the description box just to make everybody make it easy for everyone to find you. So thank you again.
You're welcome. And just want to say, anyone who loves cats, the herbal cat will be coming out probably at the end of the year, if not by Christmas, or if our publisher has to, it will be in February of next year, but hopefully it'll be by Christmas.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for watching. A reminder that in the description box, you will also find links to my own Substack as well as my websites. And so until next time, goodbye.